The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com. And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, NORMLAudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back to NORML's Daily Audio Stash today. It is Tuesday, October 16th. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us at NORML right now to help end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit norml.org to make your donation or join NORML today. Folks just got in last night from beautiful Los Angeles, was out there attending the 2007 annual NORML conference there from Thursday of last week, well, right up until last night. The conference proper took place on Friday and Saturday, and I have to say, it was the most incredible gathering of marijuana law reform advocates I've ever seen. Alan St. Pierre, NORML's executive director, and Keith Strupp, NORML's founder, did an excellent job bringing together all of the personalities, voices, and groups into this conference this year. Also on Saturday night was the annual Stony Awards from High Times Magazine, a star-studded event it was, too, hosted by none other than Tommy Chong. Tommy also stopped by the NORML Awards ceremony on Friday night. That audio already available here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash from our special Saturday posting. I have to tell you, folks, there's no other place than Los Angeles. It really was a welcoming atmosphere for the NORML conference and the Stony Awards. Everyone in town was just so kind and nice to us. It really was a wonderful experience there in Los Angeles. And, of course, the attitudes towards marijuana really are unmatched in any other city in this country, both from medical marijuana being available there for over 10 years and then just the general attitudes towards marijuana that Los Angeles has always held. So it really was a wonderful time out there. Also, though, I have to say, Thursday night, the first night I got in, a medical marijuana facility was raided at 620 East 1st Street, right in Los Angeles. I had the car available, so we decided to go down to that dispensary raid. We'll have that audio for you on Thursday of this week. We got to see the police wrapping up the raid. We interviewed the dispensary operators. We actually ran into comedian Ngayo Bilam, who was right around the corner as the raid was happening, and he wanted to show his support for the facility as well. So that was a very interesting experience. Here on the Audio Stash, we often cover the raids and follow up with lawyers who are representing those who operate dispensaries in California. We had Addison DeMora, who was at the conference here on the program just a few weeks ago. But to see what the DEA does, to see what happens to a medical marijuana facility when it is raided in person, was an unmatched experience for me, having covered all of this really from afar. The DEA came in, they smashed windows, they took the marijuana, they took the money, they did not arrest anyone, and they did take the money and the marijuana, well, at gunpoint. There was a SWAT team inside of the facility. It was all said and done in about half an hour. At the end of the raid, there were about 100 activists out on the street peacefully confronting the Los Angeles police and the DEA as they wrapped up the raid. So the kind of activism that happens in Los Angeles around medical marijuana facilities is unmatched in my view. It was incredible to gather all that group of people in one place at one time to show their support for safe access in the city. So that was the interesting start to my trip out there in Los Angeles. Friday started up the conference proper, really with some incredible speeches and panels, one of which we're going to hear today. The keynote speech on Friday was Rick Steves, PBS travel host and author. Rick, of course, has been right here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash on a few occasions. We got a chance to sit down and interview him Friday as well. I have to say it was wonderful meeting Rick in person and hanging out with him throughout the weekend. An incredibly generous individual and very interested in marijuana law reform. Not only did Rick speak on Friday, but I saw him attend many of the panels at the conference. So really an active conference attendee, taking in all of the information from a lot of the other presenters. Friday also had two important panels. One was a state legislative reform panel moderated by Paul Armentano, featuring a talk about different state legislative reform efforts around the country, both ones that have passed this year and others that are upcoming next year as well. Also on Friday was the You've Got Questions, We've Got Answers panel. That was moderated by Marcia Rosenbaum and featured Dr. Mitch Earlywine, John P. Morgan. That was moderated by Marcia Rosenbaum and featured Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Dr. John P. Morgan, and also Harry Levine from the Queens College of New York. That panel in particular really gives all of us who are pushing for marijuana law reform a lot of information and ammunition to make sure that reform happens. We'll have pieces of that panel throughout the week, and again, the full panel will be posted on the NORML Events podcast. We even have DVDs of that panel available. We'll have information on how you can get those DVDs later in the week right here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash. So here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash podcast today, we'll play a portion of Rick Steves' speech on Friday of last week, the keynote speech on the first day of the NORML 2007 conference. We'll also play a portion of our sit-down interview with Rick as well. That video will be available on YouTube later in the week. And folks, boy, we have a huge stack of t-shirts, signed conference posters, conference memorabilia. We have all kinds of stuff to give away this week and next week right here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash. The t-shirt and poster giveaways are going to start up tomorrow, so make sure you don't miss a show. Tune in every day to your free stash, NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Let's get to our first bit of NORML 2007 conference audio. Here's Rick Steves, his speech on Friday, October 12th at the NORML Annual Conference in Los Angeles.
It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Rick Steves, who many of you know from public television, of course. Let me just briefly tell you a little about him. He's a host of a popular public television series called Rick Steves Europe, and author of 22 European travel books. In 1976, Rick started a small business at that time called Europe Through the Back Door. I think it had one employee, and I think he now has 60 employees. He started off with a couple of minivan tours each year that took care of 200 people. They now have 200 annual bus tours that escort more than 5,000 Americans through Europe. Rick self-published his first edition of his travel skills book called Europe Through the Back Door in 1980. It has since become a bestseller. He has also written 8 other country guidebooks, 5 city guides, and a number of other publications. In addition, Rick is frequently writing columns and newspaper articles, and on that subject, I'm very proud to say that in today's Los Angeles Times, a 1,000-word op-ed piece by none other than Mr. Rick Steves. Rick is one of public television's top pledge drive hosts. He raises more than $1 million a year for local public television stations across the country. His newest TV series, Rick Steves Europe, premiered in 2002 with 14 episodes. He's now producing his 7th season. This may be old. It may be 8th season by now. He lives with his wife, Ann, and his 2 children in Edmonds, Washington. And what I really want to say about Rick is that I honestly believe that Rick is the single most effective advocate for legalizing marijuana in America today. Please welcome Rick Steves.
Whoa. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, right. Okay, well, it's great to be here. Thanks, Keith, for those great words, kind words. I was in Istanbul 3 days ago, and coming back here, it's always a sort of a jolt. And we're in the land of the life, liberty and pursuit of happiness and everything. We're advertising the good life in so many in-your-face ways. But when you look at it, we could really do a better job. We've got the famous, outside of our country, for having the shortest vacations in the rich world. I was just in Greece. I met a guy who lived 20 years in New Jersey, and then he went back home to Greece. He said he never took a nap while he was in New Jersey. You just don't do it here. Now a nap's part of his daily routine. Steve was talking about some guys who are naked in the jacuzzi here. Like, that's big news here. Well, in Europe, that's what you do. I was just in Germany with one of my groups, and so excited to be in Baden-Baden, the greatest spa town, and it's something I look forward to. You just relax in a spa with a bunch of people, and you don't take clothes with you. And I met one of my tour guides there, and I said, well, I bet your group's into this. And she said, nobody's going to the spa. Not one person out of 24 had the nerve to take their clothes off with the Germans. It's not that tough. I produce TV shows, and I have to be so careful for this American electorate, this American uptight community. We bring art home, and we really have to think carefully about showing a 500-year-old breast painted by Titian on canvas, or a 2,000-year-old penis that some guy carved. We can't show it on TV without some states running our show after 10 o'clock in the evening when kids are sleeping. It's amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing to me. And what's also amazing to me is our drug policy. When you travel in Europe and you talk to I was just in Barcelona. Kids go to bed, parents are socializing, a couple of joints come out. It's just part of the scene. It's just part of the scene. It's part of, as Alan was saying, responsible adult use. And I was just thinking, I come home, and in so many ways, we live in a land of lies. I just don't want to embrace lies. We hear about compassionate conservatism. We hear about leave no child behind. We've got something called the Department of Defense. And we've got a lie called that marijuana is evil. Irresponsible use of marijuana is bad, and it should be dealt with accordingly. But responsible use of marijuana is a different thing. The lie that marijuana is in itself evil is one lie too many. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today. I just believe that the prohibition on marijuana is not only wrong-minded, but it's counterproductive. That's why I'm part of NORML, and that's why I came home a little bit earlier than I would have otherwise from Istanbul to be here with you guys today. Now, I'm a travel writer. And I think my activism in marijuana law reform kind of comes out of my experience as a traveler. I write books, I got TV shows and so on, and my parents forced me out of my comfort zone to let me see a different sort of angle on things. They didn't know that was going to happen, but I got over Europe as a little teeny bopper, and all of a sudden I realized, wow, this is not so bad. I didn't want to go, but I got over there, and on day 2 I thought, wow, different candy, different pop. There was one-armed bandits in the hotel lobbies, statuesque women with hairy armpits. I mean, it was a different world. It was a wonderland for a little 14-year-old kid. Since then, I've spent a quarter of my life in Europe living out of a suitcase, talking to people who would not trade passports. People who may not have the opportunity or the affluence or a lot of the blessings that we have here in the United States, but they wouldn't trade passports. And I realized, hey, that's cool. They don't have the American dream. They've got the Bulgarian dream. They've got the Moroccan dream. They've got the Latvian dream. And that is something to celebrate. So what I've developed is sort of a European perspective. And that's what lets me be an effective spokesperson, I think, is because I can just bring home some ideas that other people have struggled with as they deal with the same problems as we are. To me, travel it's accelerated living. You make more friends, you have more memories. I can remember every meal I had in the last month on this last trip. It's just everything is just more vivid. And the travel experiences challenges these truths, and it makes us more humble so that we can address untruths in our society a little more creatively. I mean, when you travel, you find all sorts of fascinating things that just didn't add up. I mean, in Bulgaria, this means yes. Try doing that. It's tough. Yes. I mean, can I go in the door? And they go, that means no. And I go through the door and I get in trouble. In France, slow service is good service. I'm a tour guide. My people are frustrated because the service is so slow. Why do they not like Americans? You got to understand they're respecting you. You got the table all night. Slow service is good service. I was just in Turkey. Standard breakfast in Turkey is olives and cucumbers. Olives and cucumbers and dates. And they're kind of into it. When Muhammad broke his fast, he would break it in the morning with a date. When you travel, you find people do things differently. They deal with problems differently. One of my favorite memories was in Japan, where, they don't heat their house in general, but they have little space heaters. They heat in small ways. I got up in the middle of the night. I was there in the winter. It was freezing. Kimonos just don't fit me, so I put on the kimono, stick on the little slippers, shuffle down the hall to the bathroom. It's freezing. I could see my breath, not looking forward to sitting on that toilet. Get to the end of the hallway, slip out of those tiny slippers and slip into the bathroom slippers, go down, sit down, and the seat is heated. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. I mean, I can't tell you how much fun it is when we travel to stumble on these odd little gems of how people do things differently. Travel carbonates your life. It's refreshing. It gives you a different perspective. It's fun. And in so many ways, I think it's like marijuana. It gives you a different perspective. It's fun. It's refreshing. Travel also overcomes fear. Fear is a problem in our society these days. I deal with it a lot in my work. I mean, because I'm trying to promote travel and people are, is it safe over there? Are you really traveling these days? Islamofascism. I think the biggest threat to our country is not Islamofascism, but people who use that phrase to scare us. Again, I was just in Turkey. It was so great. And it happened to be Ramadan. And people are afraid of different stuff, I mean, Turks can't help it if they look like somebody who could assassinate the Pope. And it kind of gets Americans a little bit nervous. Turks are the most beautiful people you could ever encounter. And they got powerful faiths. And they're in a it's just not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood over there, it's tough. And I don't envy them for what they're going to be dealing with in the near future here. But during Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, it's a lot of nervousness for Americans over there because you have these prayer calls wailing and you have people fasting and you have people that have, unusual religious outfits going on. And if you know a little bit about it through your travels, it becomes something that's not a fearful thing, but something that's a joy. Every morning, and traditionally an imam waits and he looks, and when he can tell the difference between a gray hair and a black hair, that means it's light enough to call people to prayer. And the first line is, it's better to pray than to sleep. And then God is great. And people get up and they pray. It could be scary. It doesn't need to be scary if you understand it. Now in America, there's a huge fear, I believe. And that is, we've got a giant reservoir pent up of people who, if it was only legal, want to ruin their lives and turn our country into one big hemp fest. This is a fear people have when they think about legalizing marijuana. I just flat out don't think that's the case. I've been in countries where a joint is about as exciting as a can of beer. In India, in Nepal, in Morocco, in Denmark, in Switzerland, in the Netherlands, in the Czech Republic. It's not a big deal. It's just there. It's just some people responsibly relaxing with an herb. Fear is something we need to address as citizens who care in this great country. I'm just really thinking fear is the flip side of wisdom, and they're using it against us. To me, the biggest fear right now for me is the fear of a dumbed-down society. And there's powerful people that would find it convenient if we were all just dumbed down and complacent. It occurred to me the other day, there's kind of an equation. Dumb electorate equals dumb government. Not the other way. We need to expect ourselves to be smarter. We need to expect our neighbors to be smarter. We've got to get over this bumper sticker business. Politicians understand the silliness of the prohibition on marijuana. I've talked to a lot of politicians. I'm friends with I'm lucky because all the senators and congressmen in my state of Washington love to travel, and they use my guidebooks, and they love to get together. They want to talk travel, I want to talk pot. So we have a compromise. They all understand where I'm at, and they're all right with us. But smartly, unfortunately, they have to be pragmatic. They don't want to get swift voted. It's not their fault. It's the electorate's fault. And that means it's a grassroots problem, and that's what NORML and a lot of people involved in this are working on. As a travel writer, ever since 9/12, I've thought of myself as sort of a little more than a guy who finds budget hotels and gives you tips on seeing the museums without waiting in lines or whatever. I'm kind of like the medieval jester. In the Middle Ages, there was a medieval jester. You know, he was the only guy that could go out there and see what it's like outside of the walls and come in and tell the king, the emperor, what it was like, just straight to his face. And they didn't kill him. They needed that information. As a travel writer, it's really fun for me now in this fearful post-9/11 time when our country is outvoted the United Nations routinely 140-4, when we're 4% of the planet spending as much as everybody else put together on weaponry, and you can't even get elected these days without promising more. It's fun for me to go out there and come home like the jester and say what I found. And my thoughts on European drug policy are part of that, what I can bring home. I can invade people's comfort zones as a travel writer. I just have it in my blood. My dad used to be all wigged out about Allah and Islam and everything. And when my son was 3 years old, at table grace time, I taught him to bow his arms like this and say, Allah, 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 when Grandpa came over. Then I took my dad to Turkey, which is a much better way to get him over his fear. Again, when you travel outside of the United States, you realize marijuana is not a big deal.
That was Rick Steves, a portion of his speech Friday, October 12th at the NORML Annual Conference in Los Angeles. We'll have the full speech available along with video available on the NORML Events podcast later in the week. We get a chance to sit down with Rick for a short set of interviews there at the conference on Friday. Here's a portion of one of our interview sets.
We're here with Rick Steves at the NORML Conference in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Rick, thank you so much for joining us here today.
It's great to be here. I look forward to this event.
You know, you talked about in your speech different travels to Nepal and Afghanistan. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about those Far Eastern travels as well and your experience with cannabis in those cultures.
Well, when you travel, anywhere you travel, you're just kind of mindful of what do people do to relax, what do people do socially, and so on. And, of course, it's dangerous when you're talking about drugs when you're traveling, so you've got to use common sense. I don't want to promote people using drugs that may or may not be legal. I think in most of these countries, technically, marijuana is illegal. I don't actually know. On the other hand, you get immersed in a village and everybody is casually having a dinner and it's a multi-generational thing and the young adults are smoking some pot. It just seems right. I mean, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And I've been traveling for 30 years and there's a lot of countries where casual, recreational, relaxing, social marijuana use is part of the social fabric. And it's kind of an inspiration to see that it's almost a family values kind of thing. I mean, everybody's together, and it's a nice glass of wine or a little bit of marijuana. They don't have the heaviness that we have because they don't have this culture of illegality associated with it.
Is there any particular experience or culture where you've been very surprised by people openly smoking cannabis?
Well, in India, Nepal, Afghanistan, my understanding is it's, for a lot of people, part of their religion or there's something to do with their faith or their Hinduism. I don't really understand it, but it just feels more in who they are. And you see it for sale in markets, and you wander around at night, and you wonder, everything is so kind of glowing, and you just, you know, the banana tastes awfully chalky, and these kids are just coming at you, and the people are also mellow and cool, and there's a little bit of cannabis going on, and it's just not a big deal. As I said in my talk, it's about as exciting as a can of beer.
When you're here in Los Angeles, where there have been a lot of federal raids, yet there is this amazing cannabis culture here in Los Angeles, would you recommend traveling here? I mean, especially to people around the country, is Los Angeles a travel destination for this type of thing, do you think?
No, I would not recommend traveling to Los Angeles. Although I was coming into town and I was singing that Arlo Guthrie song, you know, coming into Los Angeles. You can't help it. Other people sing Santa Monica Boulevard, but I was singing coming into Los Angeles. No, I wouldn't mess with it. I just feel bad about the whole legal dance and the medical stuff and the clinics and the raids and the politicians and the fear and the misunderstanding. And I spent a third of my adult life in Europe, and over there, again, they're beyond it. It happens. It's going to happen. What is there? 50 million Americans that smoke pot occasionally. If you arrested them all tomorrow, our country would be a much less interesting place. I can promise you that. We've got some serious problems to deal with. We've got serious drug problems to deal with. We've got drug problems. We've got alcohol problems. We've got kids that are messed up with drugs. We need credibility. We need to cut the charade on marijuana for adults and focus our precious resources when it comes to drug policy on harm reduction. That's my theme. In Europe, they consider drug abuse a medical problem, a health issue, rather than a criminal problem. They measure the effectiveness of their drug policy not by how many people you lock up, not by how high do you drive the value of the stuff in the streets up, but they measure the effectiveness of their drug policy by harm reduction, pragmatic harm reduction. And that's what I'm all for. I'm not saying smoke pot. I'm not saying use drugs. I'm saying people are going to smoke pot. There's going to be a drug problem. A society can get together and minimize the harm drug use causes a society with a smart drug policy. Now, alcohol's a drug, and I dig alcohol. I've got more money these days. I like good wine. It's just great. And I don't know if it's not a bad thing to appreciate a drug. And some cultures and some generations have drugs that are illegal and nerve-wracking to use. And as a person who has found a lot of joy and a lot of creative benefit in marijuana, and a person who's got a lot of friends who are smoking responsibly as adults, I just feel it's an ethical issue for me. It's a matter of principle. I'm an American. We're a country where we can advocate to change law if we disagree with the law, and I think this law is wrong. That's why I'm a board member at NORML. That's why I traveled to Los Angeles this year to talk about it. And what I bring is a little bit of a European perspective. And from my experience, Europe doesn't have a lock on all the answers, but Europe has done a lot of good thinking. And one thing I can say clearly about Europe is they deal with problems with a little more intellectual discussion. They don't dumb it down to little bumper stickers. It's not as simple as, you're with us or you're against us, 3 strikes and you're out, 0 tolerance. That just doesn't work in Europe, because Europe is not interested in, they've got politicians that can assume an attention span. In the United States, politicians assume no attention span. Therefore, they have to talk in bumper stickers. And you can't get into the issues that we're talking about today if you're limited to a bumper sticker. You get swift voted, and then you're out of office. Consequently, you've got a little bit of insanity in our system, and it's you can blame the electorate. And what I'm interested in doing is talking about this. And I find that even people who have always thought this is a terrible thing, if you can talk to them for 20 minutes about it, at least they can understand there's 2 sides to the argument. And they can understand that I'm not soft on drugs. I'm smart on drugs.
Is there a particular turning point for you? You do incorporate it into your books. You do come to the NORML conference. You do speak about this very frequently now. Was there a particular point for you or a catalyst for you that made you want to talk more about it publicly and incorporate it into your work?
The turning point for me is, like so many people in my generation, I smoked a little casually when I was in college. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, I was too busy to get high all the time. But, when I needed a break, I wanted to take a good break. And I can remember listening to Beatles songs and hearing instruments that I didn't know were there. You know what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful thing. As a travel writer, my job is to experience things vividly, write them down vividly, bring them home in a way that inspires people to go out there and experience the world. I have found that because I've smoked marijuana, I can be a better travel writer. I think I'm not a composer, I'm not a musician really, but I would imagine musicians can say the same thing. Now, some beloved jazz musician in our society couldn't sit here and talk about it because his record label might get him in trouble. My publisher's cool. I can talk about this. So I just feel like I'm one of the rare people that can speak openly about this. As far as a turning point for me to get active, there's just too many lies in our society. There's too much fear. There's too many people that are abused by corporate-shaped media, mainstream media. I'm in media. I've got a radio program in public radio. I've got a TV program in public television. I'm a soldier for public broadcasting, because in public broadcasting you can assume attention span, and you can talk about things that will offend corporate sponsors, and that's a valuable thing for the fabric of our democracy. And this just relates to that. I'm in a kind of a quandary because I think there are more serious issues than marijuana. I mean, we've got global warming, we've got a war, we've got a tsunami worth of innocent children dying every week around the world for easily avoidable hunger and health issues, that if the United States really wanted to, we could think creatively and deal with these issues. But there's a lot of people that know more about that and that can talk more effectively about that. The one thing I think I can be an effective spokesperson for, because of my European perspective and because of the fact that I can't be fired and I don't mind being boycotted, is I can talk sanity when it comes to drug policy and the prohibition on marijuana that our government is carrying on right now.
And also, too, you talk a lot about all of us being active and all of us really taking a lot more of an active role, just not necessarily speaking out on a stage, but speaking out to regular people.
Yeah.
What have you found to be a good approach for this? I mean, especially to people who aren't necessarily like-minded.
Well, first of all, you need to shoot the torpedoes in advance. They're going to think you're soft on hard drugs. They're going to think you're in favor of kids smoking. They're going to think you're in favor of not caring about that kid that got in a car wreck or the crime associated with it. You got to shoot off all of these in advance and assure people this is a parenting issue. This is a compassionate issue. This is a pragmatic issue. This is an economic issue. This is a small government issue. There's so many very clear and logical reasons that you can tell people this is why I care passionately about this issue. You need to be comfortable assuming they will not think less of you because of your belief when it comes to marijuana drug laws. And I have found, which is fascinating to me, that it's bizarre, I become a local hero because I speak openly about this. And what I derive from that is there's a lot of people that wish they could speak openly about it, but they're just too afraid. Again, I cause a lot of people a lot of confusion because I'm pretty outspoken in a lot of very mainstream charity kind of things. You know, I give talks for the YWCA. I own I've got a 25-unit apartment complex that houses single women and their children who would otherwise be homeless. I'm a leader in my church. I'm a busy fundraiser for public television, all sorts of important causes. And because I've got a business and because I've got a platform, because I can tell a few stories about Europe, people like to listen to me. So I take advantage of that opportunity to share my thoughts on these areas. And then I weave in the marijuana stuff, and people love it. I get hired to give talks all over the United States to very conservative, these rich ladies clubs down in the Deep South and so on. And, they just can't believe this guy's talking to them about this, and they love it. It's very stimulating to them. It's very refreshing to them. And even people that are pretty naive when it comes to all the lies our society dishes out, even they are realizing that it's time for a little sanity.
That was a portion of our interview set with Rick Steves on Friday, October 12th there, right at the NORML conference. We're going to have more interviews, more conference audio, and lots of things to give away all this week and next week right here on your best free stash, NORML's daily audio stash. Make sure to tune in every day. And make sure you join NORML at www.norml.org. Make a donation. Join NORML today because it is NORML that brings together all of the groups seeking marijuana law reform. It is NORML that holds these annual conferences to present all of this information and all of these voices, not just to the folks within the movement, but to all of you in the public as well. Make sure to make your donation today. Join NORML today. We want to legalize marijuana, and we need your help to do it. Just go to norml.org and join us today. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll be back at 4:20 tomorrow. Everyone, have a great Tuesday. listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. You ever wondered what Amsterdam is all about? Don't just read about the culture that has accepted cannabis. Experience it firsthand with CS Travel's Sensible Amsterdam Tour with NORML. Travel to one of Europe's most beautiful cities this January for an educational and recreational visit to a city that regulates cannabis like alcohol. CS Travel has arranged an exclusive visit for reform-minded Americans that includes a private tour of some of Amsterdam's most renowned coffee shops, educational seminars with coffee shop proprietors, local law enforcement, members of the Cannabis Retailers Association, and NORML staff. Entertainment includes a special evening at the Boom Chicago Comedy Club, canal tours, visits to the city's many museums, including the world-famous Van Gogh Museum. Don't just wonder about Amsterdam, experience the beauty and freedom of this unique city firsthand with CS Travel and NORML's Sensible Amsterdam Tour. Pricing information is available online at coffeeshoptravel.com. That's coffeeshoptravel.com. Or call toll-free at 800-816-1846. That's 800-816-1846. Be a sensible American. Visit Amsterdam with CS Travel and NORML this January. Call 1-800-816-1846 right now to book your trip. More information is available at norml.org.